Georgia urban legends. Ghosts, curses, and things that shouldn't exist. Some places whisper their secrets. Georgia? It screams them. Abandoned towns swallowed by lakes. Bridges where footsteps echo long after the living has left. Creatures lurking in rivers and swamps. This state is packed with stories best told around a flickering campfire. Some are rooted in history, others in nightmares, and a few in something far stranger. Ever heard of Lake Lanier? People go in and don't come out. Locals say hands reach up from the depths, pulling swimmers under. What about Spook Bridge? Go ahead, take a stroll at midnight. If you enjoy hearing whispers and feeling invisible eyes follow you. Then there's the Boo Hag, a skinless creature that sneaks into bedrooms at night, riding its victims until they can't breathe. And that's just a taste. Georgia is filled with restless spirits, lost civilizations, and curses that never quite fade. Some call them legends, others call them warnings. Either way, if you ever find yourself alone in the dark, maybe don't look over your shoulder. You might not like what's looking back. Lake Lanier, Georgia's drowning pool. Some lakes are peaceful, some are fun. And then there's Lake Lanier, a place where people disappear, boats sink without warning, and the water feels like it's watching. Built in the 1950s, this lake wasn't always a lake. Before the government flooded it, entire towns sat where the water is now. Houses, roads, even cemeteries, some graves were moved, others not so much. And ever since, things have been going horribly wrong. Swimmers claim unseen hands pull them under. Boaters hear screams drifting across the water, but when they look, nothing. Cars have driven straight into the lake, but their drivers never make it out. More than 500 people have drowned here, many of them strong swimmers who should have made it back to shore. Some blame the spirits of those buried beneath the waves. Others think it's the land itself, angry that it was stolen, flooded, forgotten. Whatever the reason, Lake Lanier isn't just a body of water. It's a trap, and if you swim there, you might not get to leave. Altie, Georgia's own river monster. Every good body of water needs something lurking beneath the surface. Scotland has Nessie. Georgia? It has an Altie. For centuries, fishermen along the Altamaha River have told stories about something big, something long, dark, and faster than anything they've ever seen. Descriptions vary, but most say it's a massive, eel-like creature with ridged fins and a snake-like head. Some claim it looks like a prehistoric sea monster. Others say it has the face of a seal. One thing everyone agrees on? It's not supposed to be there. Native Muskogee tribes spoke of a water spirit in the river long before settlers arrived. By the time Scottish colonists settled in Darien, they were reporting strange disturbances in the water, unexplained wakes, enormous shadows, and the occasional sight of something breaking the surface before vanishing. Modern-day boaters still claim to see it, always just out of reach. Theories run wild. Some think Altie is a giant sturgeon mutated by time and nature. Others believe it's a prehistoric relic, something that should have died out millions of years ago, but somehow survived. And then some insist it's something else entirely, something that's been watching from beneath the waves, waiting to be seen. If you ever find yourself drifting down the Altamaha and the water starts to ripple, maybe it's just a fish. Or maybe Altie is saying hello. Spook Bridge, where the dead still walk. Some bridges take you from one place to another. Spook Bridge? It takes you straight into a nightmare. Once a busy crossing over the Withlacoochee River, this decaying bridge near the Georgia-Florida line has been abandoned for years. The road leading up to it is cracked, overgrown, and eerily quiet. No cars, no people, just whispers in the wind and a feeling that something unseen is watching. Legends about Spook Bridge go way back. One story claims a couple died in a car crash here, their ghosts still lingering, waiting for help that never came. Another tale says an entire school bus veered off the bridge, plunging into the river below. Locals who dare to visit at night report hearing phantom footsteps behind them, but when they turn, nothing. Then there's the water. People claim to hear splashing like something or someone is struggling beneath the surface. Some even swear they've seen wet footprints appear on the bridge, leading nowhere. Despite being closed off, Spook Bridge still attracts thrill seekers looking for a brush with the unknown. Some leave laughing. Others leave pale, shaking, and swearing they'll never come back. If you ever find yourself near this bridge after dark, one piece of advice: keep walking. Fast. Wog of Nodoroc, Hellhound of George's bubbling pit. Some places feel wrong the moment you step near them. Nodoroc? It doesn't just feel wrong, it smells like sulfur and dares you to stick around. Hidden in the woods near Windsor, Georgia, Nodoroc is a bubbling mud pit with a grim past. Native tribes once used it as an execution site, tossing criminals and enemies into the boiling sludge. No bodies, no graves, just a slow, sinking death. And according to legend, something stayed behind to guard the place. A creature locals call the Wog. The Wog isn't your typical backwoods beast. It's described as a hairless, dog-like monster with glowing red eyes, a forked tongue, and a stench that makes the air around it thick and sour. Settlers in the 1700s reported seeing it lurking near the pit, its eerie growls sending shivers down their spines. Some claimed it was the spirit of those executed, twisted into a beast that could never leave. Even today, hikers report unsettling encounters. Strange howls echo through the trees at night. People feel watched, their skin crawling as if something unseen is waiting for them to make the wrong move. A few claim to have seen red eyes flickering through the mist, too high off the ground to belong to any normal animal. Nodoroc still bubbles, still stinks, and still keeps its secrets. The Wog? Maybe it's still there, too, waiting for someone foolish enough to get too close. Moon-eyed people, Georgia's vanished underground race. Some say history is written by the victors. Others say the losers just disappeared, sometimes without a trace. Deep in the Appalachian foothills, Cherokee legend speaks of a strange people who once lived in the mountains. They were small, pale-skinned, and had oversized, moon-like eyes that made them nearly blind in daylight. They lived in caves, emerging only at night, moving through the forests like ghosts. The Cherokee called them the Moon-Eyed People. But then, one day, they were gone. According to the story, the Cherokee drove them out, taking over their land. Some say they fled underground, hiding in the caverns beneath the mountains. Others believe they were wiped out, leaving behind nothing but whispers and stone ruins. Over the years, people have claimed to see strange figures moving through the woods, too fast, too silent, their pale skin reflecting the moonlight before vanishing into the trees. Hikers have found odd stone structures deep in the forest, built in a way that doesn't match Cherokee or settler architecture. And some insist that if you listen closely near certain caves, you can still hear faint whispers in a language no one understands. Were they an ancient lost civilization? European settlers who arrived long before history books claim? Something not entirely human? Whatever they were, the Moon-Eyed People might still be out there, watching, waiting, and staying just out of sight. Trahlyta's grave, Georgia's fountain of youth and curse. Most legends promise treasure or lost cities. This one, it promises beauty and a curse for those who don't show respect. Deep in the North Georgia mountains, long before settlers arrived, a Cherokee woman named Trahlyta was said to possess an unnatural beauty. Her secret? A sacred spring hidden in the forest. The water didn't just refresh. It kept her young, strong, untouched by time. But beauty invites jealousy. A warrior named Wasega wanted her for himself. When she refused, he kidnapped her, dragging her far from the enchanted waters. Cut off from the source of her power, she grew weak and eventually died. Before her last breath, she made one request. She asked to be buried near a well-traveled path so that passing strangers would leave stones at her grave. They did, and they still do. To this day, her resting place is marked by a pile of stones, left by travelers hoping for good luck. But there's a warning. Remove a stone, and misfortune follows. Car trouble, sudden illness, strange accidents. Locals whisper about those who have ignored the legend and paid the price. The sacred spring? Some say it still exists, hidden deep in the mountains, waiting for those lucky enough or foolish enough to find it. But if you visit Trahlyta's grave, just remember one thing. Add a stone, don't take one. The last thing you want is her watching you from the trees. Curse of Haunted Pillar. Touch it and die. Augusta once had a bustling market. Vendors sold fresh produce, traders made deals, and townsfolk went about their business. Then came a preacher, wild-eyed, ranting, spitting fire and damnation. He wanted to spread his message right in the middle of the market. Authorities said no. Big mistake. Furious, he pointed at one of the stone pillars holding up the market and cursed it. Said everything would fall except for that one piece of stone. People laughed. Then, as if the universe had been waiting for a good punchline, a freak storm ripped through town. The market? Obliterated. The pillar? Standing tall, smug as ever. Fast forward a few decades. Someone tries to move it. Dead. Another guy thinks he'll demolish it. Also dead. Construction workers? Accidents. Curious daredevils? Mysterious illnesses? Car crashes? Or plain bad luck? You don't mess with cursed stone unless you enjoy playing tag with death. Eventually, city officials decided to leave it alone. Let the creepy thing just stand there, gathering dust and bad energy. That worked fine until 2016, when a car came out of nowhere and smashed right into it. Pillar finally fell. But the curse? No one's sure it's gone. If you visit Augusta and feel unusually clumsy, unlucky, or just plain doomed, maybe you brushed up against something you shouldn't have. Ghosts of Andersonville Prison, where the dead still wait. Some places were never meant to be built. Andersonville Prison? That was one of them. During the Civil War, Union soldiers were crammed into this Confederate hellhole like cattle. No food, no shelter, no mercy. 32,000 men packed into a space meant for 10. Water ran thick with disease, and stepping too close to the deadline meant a bullet from the guards. By the time the war ended, nearly 13,000 prisoners had died. But here's the thing, some never left. Visitors swear they hear whispers carried on the wind and low moans coming from nowhere. Some feel icy fingers brush against their skin in broad daylight. Soldiers have been seen walking through the old prison grounds, only to vanish before anyone can call out. And then there's the Watcher. Park rangers talk about a tall, shadowy figure that stands near the cemetery, always watching, always waiting. One of the strangest stories? Some visitors have left flowers at graves, only to return and find them burned to ash. No explanation, no fire nearby, just scorched petals and the lingering feeling that something or someone is still keeping score. Andersonville isn't just haunted, it's a wound that never closed. Step inside and you might feel it too. Surrency bright spot. When your house decides to fight back. Some homes creak at night. Some might have a weird draft. And then there's the Surrency house, a place so haunted it made headlines. Back in the late 1800s, Amos Surrency, thought he had built a nice life for his family in a quiet Georgia town. Then one day, objects started flying. Not just falling, flying. Books hurled themselves across rooms, dishes shattered against walls, and chairs dragged themselves across the floor with no one touching them. At first, the family tried to ignore it. Bad move. The house doubled down. The lights came next. Glowing orbs floating through hallways, flickering outside like they had a mind of their own. People passing by saw them, too, and some swore they weren't just lights, but eyes watching. Reporters flocked to the house, hoping to catch proof of the madness. They didn't leave disappointed. Nothing stopped the chaos. Prayers, exorcisms, desperate begging. None of it worked. The Surrency family finally did what any sane person would. They ran. The house eventually burned down, but locals say the land never stopped being restless. Travelers still report strange lights in the woods near the old property, and those who linger too long claim they hear whispers in the wind. Surrency's ghosts may have lost their house, but they don't seem ready to move on. Boo Hag, skinless nightmare that rides you in your sleep. Most ghosts just float around, maybe rattle a few chains. The Boo Hag? It climbs on your chest, steals your breath, and leaves you gasping like you ran a marathon in your sleep. Straight out of Gullah folklore, this skinless, red-eyed creature doesn't just haunt, it hunts. It sneaks into homes at night, slipping through cracks, keyholes, or any space big enough to let it in. Then it crawls onto its victim, sucking the air right out of their lungs. Those unlucky enough to wake up during this ride can't move, can't scream. Just stare into those soulless eyes until the Boo Hag decides it's had enough. Some victims wake up drenched in sweat, exhausted like they spent the night running for their lives. Others claim to have seen a shadowy figure slinking away before sunrise. If you wake up with scratches, bruises, or a feeling you weren't alone, well, maybe you weren't. The good news? Boo Hags are obsessive. Leaving a broom by the door can trap them, forcing them to count every straw until morning. Blue paint around windows and doors is another trick. It supposedly confuses them, keeping them outside. But if you ever feel something pressing down on your chest at night, whispering in your ear as your body refuses to move, don't panic. Just hope the Boo Hag gets bored and leaves before you stop breathing. Haunted Windsor Hotel, where guests check in and never leave. Some hotels offer free breakfast. Windsor Hotel in Americus? It offers ghosts. Built in 1892, this grand Victorian hotel was supposed to be a luxury escape. Instead, it became a paranormal hotspot. Over the years, guests and employees have reported flickering lights, strange voices, and doors slamming shut on their own. But the real stars of this haunted show? The spirits that never checked out. First, there's the housekeeper and her young daughter. Stories say they lived in the hotel until tragedy struck, either a brutal accident or something worse. The mother spirit has been spotted roaming the halls while the little girl's giggles echo through empty rooms. Guests say they've woken up in the middle of the night to see a shadowy woman standing by their bed. By the time they blink, she's gone. Then there's Floyd, the former doorman. Even in death, he refuses to leave his post. Visitors feel a sudden chill near the lobby entrance, and some swear they've seen a man in an old-fashioned uniform tipping his hat, before vanishing into thin air. Ghost hunters love the Windsor, and the hotel doesn't shy away from its haunted reputation. Guests who don't believe in ghosts when they check in, they might feel differently by checkout if they make it through the night. Ghosts of Marshall House, Savannah Civil War hospital that won't stay quiet. Most hotels deal with loud guests. Marshall House? It deals with ghosts that never sleep. Built in 1851, this Savannah hotel was a grand place to stay, until the Civil War turned it into a hospital. Amputation was the treatment of choice back then. And since there wasn't much concern about disposal, severed limbs were stuffed under floorboards. When renovations happened in the 1990s, workers found bones still buried beneath the building. Now, the spirits of those unlucky soldiers seem to be making up for lost time. Guests wake up to the feeling of icy hands gripping their arms. Faucets turn on and off without warning. Shadows flicker in the hallways, moving just out of sight. Some even claim to hear the sounds of saws and distant screams, like the ghosts are still reliving their final moments. One of the most chilling sightings is a man in Civil War-era clothing standing at the foot of guest beds. He never speaks. He just stares as if waiting for something. And then, just as quickly as he appeared, he vanished. Paranormal investigators call Marshall House one of the most haunted places in Savannah. Visitors arrive looking for history. They leave with stories they never wanted. Old Governor's Mansion, Georgia's haunted seat of power. Most government buildings are full of ghosts, of bad decisions. This one, actual ghosts. Built in 1839, Milledgeville's Old Governor's Mansion housed Georgia's leaders for decades. But power doesn't come without a cost, and some say the souls of former residents never left. Visitors report shadowy figures, eerie footsteps, and sudden cold spots, especially near the grand staircase. During the Civil War, General Sherman used the mansion as his headquarters during his infamous March to the Sea. Soldiers camped in the halls, wounded men were treated inside, and some say the echoes of that chaos still linger. Staff have reported hearing furniture scraping across the floor in empty rooms, doors slamming when no one is there, and whispers that stop the second you try to listen. Then there's the little girl. People say her laughter rings through the mansion, even when no children are around. Some have seen her peeking out from upstairs windows. Tour guides have tried to track her down, only to find the rooms empty. The mansion is now a museum, but its ghostly residents don't seem to care. Whether they're former governors, Civil War soldiers, or something else entirely, one thing is clear: this house still has unfinished business. Bonaventure Cemetery, where the dead don't rest. Most cemeteries are quiet. Bonaventure? Not so much. This Savannah burial ground is famous for its eerie beauty. Towering oaks, Spanish moss, and elaborate tombstones that look more like works of art. But beneath that postcard-perfect image, something stirs. Visitors report ghostly figures wandering the paths, strange whispers floating through the air, and statues that seem to move when no one's looking. The most famous spirit? Little Gracie Watson. She died at 6 years old in 1889, and her grieving parents commissioned a lifelike statue of her. Some say the statue's eyes follow them as they walk by. Others swear they've seen tears running down her stone cheeks. At night, some visitors claim to hear a child giggling, except there's no one there. Then there are the shadowy figures. People walking the cemetery at dusk have seen them moving between the graves, disappearing the moment someone gets too close. Some report feeling an invisible hand brush their shoulder, only to turn around and find nothing but empty air. Bonaventure has inspired books, movies, and ghost tours, but no matter how much it's explored, one thing is certain: the dead here still have something to say. Haunted Fox Theater, where the show never ends. Most theaters go dark after the curtains close. Fox Theater? That's when things really get interesting. Since opening in 1929, Atlanta's Fox Theater has dazzled audiences with grand performances, golden ceilings, and a history soaked in drama. But some visitors get more than a good show. They get a brush with something unseen. Shadowy figures move in the balconies. Whispers echo through empty halls, and footsteps ring out when no one is there. One of the most famous spirits? A former projectionist who refuses to leave his post. Staff report hearing footsteps pacing in the projection booth, even when it's locked. Some have seen the figure of a man standing there, watching over the stage, before he fades into nothing. Then there are the seats. Guests have reported seeing a lone figure sitting in the audience after hours, only for the seat to be empty when someone looks again. Some performers claim they feel eyes on them from the darkened balcony, as if unseen critics are judging their every move. Ghost tours and investigators have tried to make sense of the eerie activity, but the spirits of the fox seem to enjoy the limelight. The audience may change, but the ghosts? They're always here for the next act,